Welcome back. We've got some great things for you today. I really mean that. You're really going to like these scallops. Now, the other interesting thing, when I heard you say carrots and ginger ale, I'm very intrigued by that. I've never seen that before, and I'm really excited to see what that's like. I mean, that poaching, it's really going to infuse some flavor into there.
It does.
Sure.
It does. No more flat vegetables.
Well, and that's the key. That is the key.
Okay,
Now
we're going to get, that's the rear one. We want
okay, there we go.
Okay, and what we want to do is get some heat under here to get started. We're going to just sweat these carrots a little bit.
Sweat the onions here.
Or, I'm sorry, the onions.
And we're starting on the rice. We're starting on the rice.
Yes, we're starting with the rice. Okay. We're going to sweat the onions a little bit. Some people use all butter for this. I use butter just for the flavor. The olive oil does the job without all the added fat. Put just enough butter in there to get the flavor. So what we're going to do is put some olive oil in there, just enough to get the bottom of the pan coated.
And we're going to go right in with the onions?
Onions
first or rice first?
Onions first. We're going to put the butter in there, and we're going to get this going.
And interestingly enough, and I'll interject here real quickly, Steve had mentioned that he's doing rice pilaf. And when you talk about rice pilaf, it's the pilaf method. And the pilaf method is when you sear that rice.
That's right.
In a little bit of this oil here.
Okay, we're going to put the onions in. And a little bit of salt just to help them sweat the liquid out.
And that does work. That salt works in there just to pull some of that out of there, no question.
And turn this down a little bit.
Well, again, I hate to keep going back and mentioning it, but that Viking range makes some heat.
Yes, it does. I'm used to cooking with electric, so. All right, and that's looking pretty good right now. We're going to put in 1 cup of rice. The measurements aren't real critical. What is critical is that you want to use 2 cups of liquid for 1 cup of rice.
Or 2 to 1 kind of a thing. Now, and for this you used we had a pretty large onion, you used about a half an onion.
Yes.
And what you'll see him doing, again, very important to note that this is a pilaf method. Right now, this rice is absorbing all of that oil, and you're going to just kind of toast it as you go through. Of course, after the onions are just a little bit translucent.
Yes. What we want is we want the rice to get opaque, not brown.
Right. And it does that quickly.
Yes, it does.
And
then once it does, we're going to...
Can we show them that real quickly?
Sure.
And again, you can see that the onions are nice and opaque, and you can see that the rice, it is really just turning color.
That's correct.
Almost clear before, and it gets some nice color to it in this. So I hope you can see that.
Now again, we want to get this liquid. This is chicken stock. You can use whatever liquid you like. I like to use chicken stock. Gives it a nice flavor.
Again, everything he's adding here absolutely has some flavor to it.
And we're going to get that.
Now I'll tell you what we're going to do, Steve. We're going to move that to the back burner, actually.
Going to turn this off.
Okay.
Get the back on.
And then you're going to cover that, correct?
Yes, I am. As soon as that comes up, I'm going to give that a cover.
Now we're going to let's let that come up just a little bit. I want to see what happens here when we start cooking this, because we ran into an interesting aspect yesterday. And it's, for you folks, this is going to be about a week ago, but we were judging a competition, and they cooked rice. And one of the things that he kept doing, and I could see this as he was doing it, kept taking the lid off the rice.
No, no good.
Once you put this lid on,
that has to stay on so that
absolutely.
You need that steam in there because you want the rice to absorb all that liquid. You take the lid off, the steam comes out. Now there's no real pressure in there to push that liquid and flavor into the rice.
Absolutely. And what's nice about these pans, a clear glass lid, you can see what's going on.
Exactly what's going on.
So we'll pop that on. You can see the steam building up already. So again, that's just what we want. We've got this on a pretty low kind of heat at this point, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Something like that.
You don't want to, what you want to do is once that comes to simmer, you want to keep it at a simmer.
No hard boiling.
You don't want a hard boil, because what will happen is all the liquid will disappear before the rice absorbs enough to become nice and tender. You want it tender, not mushy.
And not crunchy.
No, not. Crunchy rice is not good.
Yeah, not a lot of fun.
We're going to get our carrots started next.
Now with the carrots, this is going to be interesting. I want to see this. Do you do any cooking with the carrots in advance?
No. What you want is, if your carrots are refrigerated, you want your ginger ale refrigerated. If your carrots are at room temperature, you want your ginger ale at room temperature. You want them to start out at the same temperature. By starting at the same temperature, you ensure that the carrots cook evenly all the way through.
Okay, very good. And you know, interesting, this is another thing that when I'm doing demonstrations and things like that, this is a chemistry lab right here.
It is.
There's no question about that.
It is.
It's a chemistry
turn
lab.
that rice down just a little bit.
Again, we've got this to a great, nice simmer now. We don't want it to boil. One of the other things that we've done here, and you may not have seen, you added some things.
Yes, I added some Italian seasoning and garlic. You can put whatever flavors you want into this. Poultry seasoning, maybe something a little hotter. I like the garlic and the Italian seasoning. It depends on what you're serving it with.
Sure, sure. And also, when would you normally add that?
Normally you would add it before we put the lid on. What we did was I put it in immediately after I had that lid on. I realized that we had forgotten to put that in, so I put it in. It's no big deal. It's not going to kill the dish. That's what happens at home.
It absolutely does. Okay, we'll get started on our carrots.
Okay, our carrots.
Now we're going to bring this up as well.
Yes, we're going to use some baby carrots. Again, I want to emphasize they're the same temperature as the ginger ale. And we have some ginger ale here, whatever brand you like.
So, and it doesn't matter the fizziness of the ginger ale. So even if you had some flat ginger ale, you'd be fine.
That's fine. What you're looking for is the flavor of the ginger ale. And we want to get this going. And typically what I do is I put a lid on it just till it comes to a boil. Just makes it boil fast.
Okay, okay, and just bring up to a boil. Now, do you let the lid on?
No, I take the lid off. Once it gets going pretty good, I take the lid off, turn the heat down, let them go at a low boil for about 7 or 8 minutes once they're boiling.
Right.
Once they're actually boiling.
Excellent. And then it's going to evaporate some of that ginger ale.
It's going to evaporate some. We're going to dump the rest off. What I want is a little bit of ginger ale left in there when I put the maple syrup in, because we want to combine the flavors of the maple and the ginger, and we're going to put some butter in there too to carry that flavor through for us.
You can't live without butter. You cannot live without butter.
The key is to be judicious with the amount of butter that you use. You want the flavor of the butter, but you don't want to be loading it up with butter.
Sure, sure. That's fantastic, fantastic. Okay, now we're going to mix our spices and our seasonings for the scallops.
The scallops, yes. And what I have here is I have about a half a cup of cocoa. And there are various ways that you can do this. You can dump it all into a Ziploc bag and mix it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dump it onto a paper plate, because that's where we're going to dredge the scallops.
Now, the one question that I do have for you, and in your shopping list, you had not a Dutch process cocoa.
That's correct. Dutch processed cocoa you want to use for things that do not get cooked. A Dutch processed cocoa you might want to use for a hot cocoa drink, something like that. If you're cooking the cocoa in a recipe, a cake, or something such as that, you want to use regular cocoa.
Okay. Now, and interestingly enough, the spices you're going to use today are chili powder,
cayenne. And some cayenne. Cayenne to give it some heat, the chili powder to give that little, I wonder what that is.
Sure. And interestingly enough, the cocoa is a frequent, or chocolate is a frequent addition ingredient list to chili. I see that frequently.
Yes, it is. And if you look into the origins of chocolate and cocoa, in the Mexican regions, they often, when they made hot cocoa, they would put some chilies in that.
Sure, sure. Now, in this case, it looks like you have about a tablespoon.
About a teaspoon.
Teaspoon?
About a teaspoon of each.
Teaspoon of each. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
And then we're just going to mix this together.
And again, just to get it kind of incorporated, and I can see where a plastic bag would really come in handy here.
Yeah.
And
we want to mix this together. Now, when we do dredge these scallops, we're not going to cover the scallops with the cocoa. Each side, once on each side, and then into the pan.
Now, interestingly enough there, you want to go directly from the dredging into the pan. You don't want to set it back down.
No. You can. It depends on how wet the scallops are. If the scallops are really wet, you'll want to go right into the pan. And
Okay.
typically they are. Now, if these are a little drier, we could set them down and let that cocoa absorb in a little bit.
Okay, okay. But you want to see a little bit of dusting on
You
there.
do,
There's
you
no
do,
question.
definitely.
But not up the
definitely.
sides.
Right, right.
Well, here's the other question. How well done do you like your scallops?
I don't like rubbery scallops. People have a tendency to take scallops and they cook the living daylights out of them.
Okay.
If you're pulling,
Well put.
if you're cutting your scallop and you're pulling it apart and you see all these threads coming out, those scallops are probably pretty well overcooked.
Cooked too long. Plus, it'll get a little sandy.
Yeah, yeah,
Excellent.
exactly.
At this point, we'll be right back. We've got a lot more great and exciting things for you to see. Please don't go away.